Welcome, everyone. I'm so excited today to have Aaran Sinift with us, who is a inspiring art activist, artist, coordinator, manager, and actually a kind of activist visionary. First, let me get away with the thank yous. I want to thank the South Asia Concentration and the Ada Howe Kent Fund, and also the Religion Department and the Museum and the Art History Department. Anyone else?
Smith College Special Collections.
Smith College Special Collections all were involved in funding this event to bring you here, and also yesterday's block printing workshop.
That was fun.
So I'm very thankful to everyone for that. I'm just going to say a few words of introduction before Aaran starts. It's really such a great pleasure to have Aaran here. I've been on the scholarly side of looking at the world of kind of art and image and commodification and thinking about kind of Gandhian collectives, but I haven't been on the ground as a kind of activist and artist and maker of these objects and worker with these people. And to have had Aaran as a conversation partner all this time has been wonderful. I've learned so much from him, and he's experienced that world in such a different way than I have. And being able to interact with him that way has improved my scholarship, but has also allowed me to kind of envision that world in a different way, to think about it in a different way. So Aaran and I have had this conversation, and I think mutual appreciation club for a while.
Sure.
And it's really nice. So to have him here and to be able to present his work is thrilling. So with that, let's welcome Aaran Sinift.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Nice technique. I'd especially like to thank Andy Rotman and Jana Rose White and Shannon Supel for their incredible support over the years. And I can't say enough about how much their collaboration means to me. Yeah. I will, let me briefly describe the project. It's the 5-year plan project. This is, no need, here I come. This is the book that was inspired. It came to my mind in 2000, well, I originally wanted to start it about 10 years before I was able to do it. In the late 90s, I had the notion to make a book of Gandhi Ashram Jola bags. What's interesting is when you're in India, and if you go to the Khadi Bhavans, you'll find these printed bags that are made by Gandhi Ashrams, and they're very useful and functional, and they predate plastic. This is what people used before plastic bags, and in fact will be using again now that plastic bags have revealed themselves to be the horrible things that we know them to be. And what they were, and Gandhi was ahead of the curve on a lot of things, and the people that followed him were also quite ahead of the curve in many ways. They would, ashram inmates, as they were called, or artists that were connected to the ashram would do designs and print them onto these bags, and they'd be sold quite cheaply. They had a very didactic intention. This is, like, kind of quotes from Gandhi on the back, and like different ways with advice for living and visualizing a better India. It was part of the nation building that was going on, as that from independence, and especially ramped up into the late 80s, early 90s, and then it kind of transformed into an open economy. But before that, it had been a kind of enclosed socialist economy with the intention of protecting small village industries. And very egalitarian, very non-hierarchical. The ashram workers are pretty amazing in the sense that the ashrams themselves are no profit, no loss enterprises. So the intention is that they are not explicitly not to make money and to support their communities. And there was something very wonderful about these jolas. But I didn't really think too hard about it. There's a picture I'll show you as we come around and when I begin showing slides. But as you use them, they get softer and better and more functional. And They're fragrant, and you can build a kind of an interesting relationship with them if you use them long enough. I know that sounds like a funny thing. In a throwaway economy like H&M would, no one waxes poetic about a pair of pants that they have at H&M really past a certain point. But it's not a throwaway commodity, which is kind of an interesting perspective shift that I really appreciated when I first came to India. There was people used things through. Anyway, so this book was intended as a kind of homage to this kind of disappearing form of visual culture in India. But why don't I show some images, because this will kind of put it in the round a little better. And I start with this image because in 1993 I go to India, and there I meet Andy in Missouri. We were housemates at the Landor Language Institute. And we both traveled to Varanasi together, and there we kind of split off into our various researches. And my research was into Pratima Murti, which is the temporary. Murti means image or sculpture, and Pratima, I believe, means temporary. And they're made out of clay, unfired clay, and they take many, many months to create. The armature of these are made out of straw on a bamboo armature, and then layers and layers of clay are built up on them and allowed to dry, and gradually kind of sculpted into what you see. The straw itself is bound with twine into the poses and the proper proportions, and it's all. What the intention of these sculptures is that what will happen in this case in the Kali Puja, a Pandit will invite the Devi to personify within the Murti, and so that people that come to the Pandal, where this is on display during the Kali Puja, will be able to have darshan, like an intimate contact with the divine, and through that will celebrate the holiday in a very deeply spiritual way. Now these are rather expensive, and so let me carry on. At the end of the Kali Puja, which is, I believe, 4 nights, that the image will be taken to the local river, in this case, the Ganges, and immersed into the Ganges, where it will dissolve back into the water. It's an unfired clay, and which to me it was just fascinating, because this is a family that's been doing this for generations, untold generations. Starting in Calcutta, but they had moved at some point to Varanasi, and I don't even know if they knew when. But the point being is that these had this kind of, to relate to an artist who was embracing the immaterial and the impossibility of preserving what they do, was an incredible kind of mind blower for me, because I'm trained in the West as an artist. We reach into our psyches and we try and draw these misshapen nuggets, and we hope that they'll find their way into a museum and onto a pedestal somewhere, or that they'll enlighten the next generation of thinkers. And so as a Western artist, probably more expressionistic, in conversation, oh my Lord, my phone. I'm so embarrassed. That's really funny. This is to remind me to do something. To give a talk, probably. Yeah, and it's the ugliest one too, because my child sometimes needs to be picked up at about this time. So, thank you. Thank you, universe. I would like to remind myself that I'm actually mortal and I'm here. In conversation with my friends, who I became friends with, I spent about 6 months with these guys, with the Pal family. This is Chitranjan, he was one of the 2 primary workers of the household. I spent about 6 months with these guys during the Saraswati Puja while they were getting their sculptures together. And in conversation with Gopal, his brother, I learned a lot about their philosophy about art, about how it didn't really, it didn't even compute. My relationship to art didn't make any real sense to them, and not because they're not artists. Clearly, they are. These are classically perfect in every way. You couldn't ask for more rigor. In fact, far more rigor than I was showing in my own painting at the time. The best way I could understand it is that they were working on subscription basis. The community, people would come in from the community and pass the hat. Little kids would come around and say, "Will you contribute a rupee or two to this thing that we're going to do? We're going to build a pandal in our lane or in our house or in the back courtyard, or in the main public square." And they would amass a certain amount of money, and then they would reserve a murti before it was actually finished. People would come in and speculate. They'd see, "Aha, I think that's going to be a good one." And so they would agree to a price, and that would probably dictate how much finish it might get or whatever. But they would do dozens upon dozens of these in this enclosed space, and people would come in ahead of time and buy them, or wait till the very last minute and get what was remaining. And I realized that they were completely intimately connected to their culture, their society, the approval of their neighbors, the reserve. What am I trying to say? The regard that they had in the neighborhood, which was pretty significant, was because on an endless cycle for time immemorial, for generations back, for hundreds of years perhaps, they had been the family that were providing the foundation of their holiday festival. Kind of like the guy you buy a Christmas tree every year, except in this case, the tree personifies God. Puts the Christ back into Christmas, as you will, or the pagan truth, or whatever, to this Christian armature that we put it hanging on. Whatever, you get the idea. It was like a very real thing, bringing the secular and the sacred completely in harmony with one another, which is a fascinating reality, and I had never seen it before. I was in my early 20s at that time, and trying to find my way as an artist. Okay, so I'm going to zip along a little bit because I'm trying to give you the sense of where my head was in relation to why this project makes any sense at all. Okay, so anyway, this gentleman here has just done an image of Shiva. I really like it. It's just a nice, this is what they look like. This is when they're finished. These are pundits in the front singing bhajans, I suppose. And this image is of Durga, and she's slaying Mahishasura. And these decorations on there, those are paper decorations. So this involves a lot of different kinds of artists as well. The clay is all painted by them, but the paper goods are done by other workshops. So there's a lot of spread out that happens here. And the Durga Puja goes on for 9 nights. And if you're ever in Calcutta at the Durga, you will not regret being in Calcutta at the Durga Puja. You will not have to look for anything to do. So anyway, so Gandhi, he's back in South Africa, and he's thinking to himself, and this is like in the early, around the turn of the century, a little before, but he has this inspiration that he, he's thinking about spinning that he remembers from a kid, but he doesn't really know kind of how he's going to deal with this empire, the British Empire, that he has to go back and face at some point. And so this woman is spinning cotton thread and binding it up into little bundles, as you can see at her feet. And those will be, I think those are punya, I believe those are called. And those are collectivized, these threads, and woven on a hand loom to create khadi cloth. And khadi cloth makes dhotis and all kinds of things. But this is how I was introduced to it, was through the jola bags, because it was immediately the most functional product that the ashrams make. Trying to explain khadi in a nutshell, basically, that Gandhi recognized that the British were exporting enormous amounts of cotton and bringing it back to Great Britain, spinning it in their mills, returning it as finished cloth. And so Indian people were purchasing this cloth. But in the process of that, weavers and spinners throughout India were losing their source of income. And so really, they'd cut out the British, through mechanization and automation, had cut out all of the handwork and all of the middlemen from this process, and were essentially leaving huge swaths of Indian culture destitute, where before they had been the primary source of fantastic fabrics that people were fighting for hundreds of years. Now they were all these methods were being lost through industrialization, which I'm sure we can all relate to these days as people get degrees in law and whatever it is that are going to be artificial intelligence are going to make obsolete. You know, so we should all give a thought to it, because I really do think that in Hind Swaraj really nailed it, because we're facing it now. So anyway, so his genius was that if the British are not, if we don't buy their goods, they'll just go home, because this is a commercial enterprise, and they'll just simply piss off and go back to their island, and you know, and we'll cultivate our local industries and sustain ourselves, self-sufficiency, and local nonviolence, self-sufficiency, and that's. I would say that pretty much sums it up beautifully. I had a friend of mine, so I'm an artist. This is a little jumpy, right? But please indulge me. I'm an artist. It's 2008, and I'm in my art studio, and I've been working there for a very long time, and I'm like about $70,000 in debt for my education and I'm painting like hell because I'm trying to make paintings for the institutional. I want my paintings to be part of the museum canon of visualized culture. Yeah, I'm working really hard. And I'm working down in Chelsea at a very good visionary art gallery. I'm paid well and all these things, but I'm spending all my time in my studio painting paintings for people who I have not yet met. And I'm not selling these paintings. And I'm asking myself, why am I spending years and years and not selling any paintings for a clientele that doesn't even know I exist? And I'm not engaged with them either. They do not know me, and I do not know them. What is wrong with this equation? How out of the local can you get? I'm visualizing a me hanging next to Goya, but I'm actually not even relating to the person that is on my wavelength. And my friend, who was my roommate, had gone to Darfur in southern Sudan, and she'd been there for 2 years. And when she was there, she loves my paintings. She bought some of my paintings, but she also would write to me from Darfur, like emails, and send pictures of people that she met. And this woman had lost her whole village, and raiders had come through and marauded and burned her life down. And she was starting over, and that was how the best she could, that was her beginning to reestablishing her claw hold in reality to survive. It was a very sad reality, and I was, at the time I'm in my studio thinking, wow, what relationship does anything I have to do matter to her in any sense? I'm creating luxury goods for people who have it and don't even need it. They don't need more, that's for sure. You know, so it was becoming a little bit obscene to participate in that process, right? So I'm starting to think, and it took me, I thought about it for a long time. So anyway, Barack Obama's running for president. That's a kind of a funny thing too, because I did this painting out of gold glitter. It's just a little bitty painting, and I sold it at a fundraiser for his election process, like before he'd even gone to Iowa. Oh, will this thing ever stop? Nope. Oh, hey, I can't talk to you, Ken. I'm sorry. First rule is to turn that silly thing off. So anyway, the painting sold, and people really dug it, and I thought, oh, okay, so I'll make more, because it was really dumb pop art, gold glitter picture of a guy running for president. It was really fun, and I sold enough to give $3,000 to the campaign. Sold 30 paintings. I sold them for $150. I gave 100 to the campaign, and the $50 bought more glitter and kept the lights on in my studio. So I thought it was kind of wrong to keep the money from doing it. And I kept my conscience clean in that regard. So when he was elected, I felt a personal investment in that, because I really only had a penny in my savings account. I better hurry along. There's another one. And so I thought, oh, why don't I triangulate some of these needs? Why don't I work in the art world. Why don't I transform the commodity value of art, like with artists like Yoko Ono. I wrote Yoko Ono a letter, and she wrote me back. Well, her assistant wrote me an email saying she likes the project and will participate, and here is an image that you can use in your book. And at that point, I realized that maybe we had something here and it could work. So I sold copies of the book in advance as a subscription in the same way that my friends who had done the Pratima back in India had done, where you just go and you say, I'll give you something that's greater than the value of what you're paying for on the promise that I will come through on this project. And so I sold lots of copies of this book in advance and also promised the participants a copy of the book as well. And in the end, I did have to borrow some money, but in the end I raised about $40,000 and went to India. This is the website. This is the first page of the website, the first run of it, and I thought it through for months before I asked anyone for any money, because the risk involving some risk in what you do was something that hadn't been in my painting process for a long time. If you paint a painting that sucks, you've got a sucky painting, but nothing is any worse off in the world. But my reputation as an individual asking for money to people whose opinion I respect, if Yoko Ono wakes up in the morning and says, that son of a bitch ran off with my money, you know, he made me look bad by doing something and used my name to get it. You know, so it was a great high wire act for me. It was highly motivated to know that I could fail, which is not something that had been in my studio practice. So anyway, so now I've got a pocket full of money and no real contacts. This is kind of funny. I had been to People Tree in 1993 at this little shop in New Delhi that was kind of a hippie shop. And they had a bookstore in the back with books about the Narmada River and Dalit poetry and all these different topics that no other bookstore had covered any facet of. And I had never met them, but I always went there every time I was in New Delhi. I always went back there, bought new books. And so I want to give a huge shout out to them because they were also enormous influence. This is Gurpreet Sidhu. She and her husband, Arijit Sen, are graduates of the School of Design in Ahmedabad, and they had started People Tree in 1990, and 1991, I think, or 92. Anyway, I go there, and I bought their work, and I'd never met them, so I looked for them when I thought of the project. I thought, oh, these people will understand what I'm into, and they sent me to the Gandhi Hindustani Sahitya Sabha, where I got to meet this guy. Vijay Kumar Handa, who is a fantastic man. His family, he was born in Lahore. He was part of the refugees from partition. They settled in New Delhi. He was a successful lawyer. In 1973, he fell in love with Beena Handa, the woman in the pink, and she dedicated her life to service at the ashram in 1973, and he gave up his law career to follow her into service to the local Dalit community and Muslim community in this little pocket of area on Rajghat by the Gandhi Museum. And these are the people the teachers of the ashram. Janendra, the guy up at the top, and Indranil in the front, and Sushant, and Sushila, and God, I can't remember his name. He's a very funny man, though. Anyway, and they were very helpful to me to kind of conceptualize and understand what it was that we were doing, because at the time I'd never been to a Gandhi ashram before. I knew I was here to do a project. They took me under their wing and kind of showed me what the world was from their perspective. And I got to say, it was very beautiful in many ways. Lots of children. There's a school downstairs, so there was constantly kids coming through, and I'd never seen people with so much love that were so adored by the people around them. And so I fell in love with them too. And Mr. Handa and I took a road trip. We went to Meerut and Modinagar and Pilakwa. Those are the circled cities there. You can see New Delhi is that little black square there. It's about 35 kilometers up Pilikwa, I believe. And there we went to the Manav Seva Sanidhi ashram, where it's probably one of the last few ashrams that actually spins thread, spins cloth, and khadi cloth, and they spin it in just rough enough and like not fine enough. It had to be rough enough to print on to make a book like this. The texture had to be just right, and so to do the book with Mr. Honda's help, I commissioned 1,400 meters of khadi cloth, which is 300 meters shy of a mile. So everything was spun by ladies like this. There's 800 of them, and Margoti Ben is her name. I've met her a few times. She's really nice. Neither of us speak a word to communicate really, but we recognize each other, and she's very sweet. And I'll never ever forget her. And this is where khadi is woven. This man is making quite wide, about 5 or 6 foot lengths of khadi cloth. More of that. The looms can get up to about 120 inches. Is that right? Or 8 feet? There's a lot of processes involved. It's incredibly time-consuming, but in the end, you got this book, and and so I'm going to zip along and show you. This is what 100 of these books look like. We made 180 of them. They were printed at Rudraksh Printers in Jaipur, a woman-owned print shop, and there's some pretty beautiful stories about Nandita Devraj, who working with her was fantastic. I spent months in Jaipur working on each page with her, getting the colors together. Took in total 4.5 months from arrival to departure. She and I did each color and proceeded from there. As the khadi came in, so as it came in, we would work on the next pages.
Can I ask what artists you got to do work on the book?
Oh yeah. Let's see. Well, Yoko Ono was among the first people. And Duncan Tonatiuh Smith is a children's book artist who I met at a Vipassana meditation retreat. Everybody is somebody I know, except for the people I didn't know, and there are very few of them. I mean, these are all friends of mine. Like Robin Beach. Robin Beach was actually the very first person I spoke to. She was living in Vrindavan, and I told her my idea. She was the first one, because I figured she would know as a textile scholar. And she's, her advice really inspired me to carry on. And she got to see this book, though she did not live to see the second. She's a great person, and if you ever find her book on her great photographer. And so anyway, I just invited my friends. Let's see, Francesco Clemente, and Julie Doucette, and Donald Batchelor, Chris Martin, Tamara Gonzalez, a lot of people that actually ended up becoming much more famous afterwards. Because this is from 2000, I was putting this together in 2009, 2008 and 2009. And since then, a lot of them have actually had like major shows throughout the world and actually have gone from, mid-range successful to blue chip, and some goes from utterly unknown to quite celebrated and famous in their respective fields. So I'm kind of flattering myself that I have a pretty good sense of what's going to mean something in time, even if I'm on the bleeding edge of culture. You know what I mean? So this is one of the images in the book. I wanted to do the book as I said before, a collection of Gandhi Ashram Jola covers. So that's the kind of the funny part. As we come back to it, nobody funds a book of something they don't know anything about. And I only had 3 or 4 examples of Gandhi Ashram Jolas it was just a hunch that this actually existed as a reality. I knew it, but I couldn't prove it. And I didn't have enough to make a book out of it. So that was why I wrote to Yoko Ono and why I wrote to all these artists, because I realized I had to fill it with artists that people could respect and understand, who would fund the project, so that I could get to the ashrams and actually prove my thesis that there was a form of art that no one was recognizing and was worth saving. it's funny. It's like this, you know, you swallow this fly to catch, you know, swallow the spider to catch the fly kind of a project, and it's been really, really fun. So anyway, this is via Andy Rotman, Professor Andy Rotman here at Smith. His collection of jute bags from Calcutta is remarkable. I will always be in awe of his good sense in collecting these way before anybody thought that there was anything here to see. But let me tell you, they're amazing. This is Donald Batchelor. He's a personal friend of mine, so it was really easy to get him there. He had done this image of Gandhi's watch. And so he was happy to contribute it. Bina Honda, the lady who I spoke about earlier, I realize we're going on time, so I'm going to have to zip along. One of the pages which I particularly love is by a woman named Pushpa Kumari. She's a tantrika who lives in New Delhi. She works in the Madhubani style. I commissioned this piece for the book. It's called The Earth as Mother. And her work is phenomenal. What this book, we sold this, I sold a copy of this for $1,600. All the artists got one. She had the land, but she didn't have the bricks. And so the sale of this book, actually, for $1,600, we sent the entire proceeds to her. Actually, I'm sorry, it was $1,800. Purchased the building materials to establish her home in the outskirts of New Delhi, which was, to me, means that's why we do these things. You know, it really doesn't matter who cares when you're dead, whether you were on the cover of Art in America. I mean, really, it doesn't matter, not a bit. But it does matter who's born in this house that Pushpa built with one of her artworks, you know? And her work is phenomenal, and I hope that she has a palace one day because she's a great artist. You can find her. I was on the cover of Esprit, the College of Fine Arts magazine at Boston University, where I'm an alumni. And they wanted the cover of the book to be a jola, because I was giving a presentation as part of the Citizen Artist series that they were doing in 2013. And so they paid me to create these jolas in India with the ashram, and they used it as the cover of their magazine. And I wish I had a copy of the magazine here else to show you, because it was quite beautiful, but you'll get the idea. Google. I've done 2 trips to India on doing bags for Google, oddly enough. Now this is absurd, but the absurdity of it all is exactly why we're here. Because the first hand looms, the first computers were designed with cards, with card punches. That's the same way that Jacquard looms are also programmed so that you can function. So they built the first computers with Jacquard loom technology in order to communicate and make complex computation. So we really owe it all basically to this process. And so I was really thinking about, like, how did we step from hand loom in India to Google? And let's just kind of rewind and play with that a little bit. This was given to high school students as, the swag by the Google Corporation. And I don't know if they had a clue what it was that we were making, but to me, like the irony was not lost on anyone in India that I was working with, and most people approved. Some people didn't, but not. The ashrams were totally cool. They were totally cool. Everybody at the ashrams thought, yeah, whatever keeps people employed. So this is from an exhibition I had at Feature Inc., this art gallery in Lower East Side. A great gallery, and a real visionary director. And what I had done was a project called the Jola Project. What had happened was I was working on a second book, and I found out that my wife and I found out that we were going to have a baby, Aaran, our son, and we didn't know yet what he was, but I knew that I had done all this work towards making a second book. So what I did was instead, I realized I'm not going to be making a book. This is going to take years. my baby's coming in about 7 or 8 months, and I have to do something, and I'll never go back to India for the next 5. So what am I going to do? So I gambled it all. I did a Kickstarter site. And what I did was I said to people, if you give me $20, I'll give you a Gandhi Ashram Jola done by one of these 14 artists that I had already signed up to do the book with. And it was just kind of a throwaway thing. Okay, for 20 bucks, I'll send you a Gandhi Ashram Jola like this. This is a work by David Dunlap. And you know, if you want to include $5 more for postage, that would be nice. And any money that we made after that would go to the ashram. And so I was able to raise about $8,000 that way. Made about 500 Jolas and shipped them all off to everyone that bought one, which was really exciting because all these people got to experience something that, you know, and tactily experience something, and also get an art edition that a very, very limited one, like that pink one up on the top row. That there is that was Francesco Clemente. So there were only 20 of those. If you own a block printed edition by Francesco Clemente for only 20 bucks. In an edition of 20. So I thought that, and with his full approval, and I know he likes the project. That was the second time we had collaborated, and Chris Martin, he's over here. Philip Toff, he is also quite well known. That's Sutanu Panagrahi, almost unknown, but from New Delhi and a wonderful artist. Julie Doucette, she's a hero of the punk rock comic book world and a very fine artist in her own right. I mean, what she does now is incredible and really heady. She's out of Montreal. Oh, this guy here, Jamie Reed. He's the guy that did the Nevermind the Bollocks Sex Pistols record cover. The guy that changed everything. Literally changed everything. This is Gloria Williams. She's an activist living she was from Brooklyn, but she now lives in the Netherlands. She's an activist. There's Yoko Ono, of course. There's my little cousin. She's about 9 years old at the time. This Duncan Tenatiu, he's won several awards for his work as a children's book artist. So there were 20 bucks. It was kind of cool, right? And Donald Batchelor, you can't forget him. He did a penny. I just thought that was great. And when you go to India, right, I'm showing this, I've got this copy of one of Lincoln's biographies, Team of Rivals by Doris Kearns Goodwin. I brought it, I was just finished it at the airport, and I showed it to Indranil at the ashram, and he told me that people at the ashram, many of them, believe that when Abraham Lincoln was assassinated, his spirit went into the bardo and was reborn in India as Mohandas K. Gandhi. For real. Because the leadership style that he exhibits in managing the Civil War and the humanity that he applied towards all combatants and managed to save the Union and liberate the enslaved Africans in America was the same mission that Gandhi had when he was born in India to do the same for his own people. But Gandhi is just a spirit. He is just a notion. And he also has died, and I really hope he's out there somewhere, you know. But anyway, seeing that from that perspective, there was a truly global, international way of visualizing the mission, because Gandhi, among Gandhi's followers anyway, their two favorite Americans are Abraham Lincoln and Dr. Martin Luther King. Unanimously, as far in my experience, those are the two Americans that get the most reverence from Gandhi activists. So anyway, I really find it a good community to collaborate with. And here, this is my friend Kakasha Khan. I had approached her earlier about doing this book. You know, before we'd done it, before I spoke to Nandita in Jaipur, I had actually approached her to see whether she'd be interested, because I love Varanasi, and I wanted to do it in the city that I love, and I knew that there was a Gandhi ashram nearby. And she was down with it, and she said she would and that she could, but I recognized that she was so involved in her work with World Literacy Canada and her advocacy of women's rights and organizing marches and such, that there was really no rational expectation that she could focus and do the project in the short time that I had. Bear in mind, because I had to do this whole edition of 180 and actually finish it in only 4 months. And I knew that she couldn't. And so I remembered her when I came back doing the Jola project. I stopped in, I visited her, I said, hey, why didn't we go down to the Sri Gandhi Ashram and see what they have in their archive? Maybe they've got some Jolas, you know? Just see what they have. It was kind of a lark. And I found out something really interesting in that process is that if you go and you ask for a Jola, they'll give you like the new Jola that they have that's nice. But if you say to them, do you have the Karabwala, you know, the bad one, the broken one, you know, you have the Puranewala, the Gandhiwala, the dirty ones, the broken ones, they're too self-conscious about economy to chuck them, to throw them away. So they had enormous quantities of shitty ones that were torn and ripped or stained or torn in some way that they couldn't sell with a good conscience, and they had decades of them. And so I ended up getting about 60 or 70 different distinct Jolas from this particular ashram. And they had been getting them from all around. So it was actually like a kind of a backroom trove. If I'd had a truck, I would have brought them all, but I just took I just made sure that I had one of each. And Kaka Shah and her husband, Jitendra Kumar, helped me in this process and worked it out. And while we were there, we got in the back room with this gentleman here who was explaining to us that they actually don't print them. They actually sent it to Akbarpur, to a facility up in Akbarpur. So as you kind of do this little, detective work, as you reverse engineer how these things happen, we found, I didn't realize that there was a place in Akbarpur, and that it would cost about $150 to print 30 meters of khadi cloth with about 5 images per meter, 4 images per meter. And that was pretty cheap. Oh, no, it was $125 to do 30 meters. It was astonishingly cheap, and I had $300 left, and like I was like my last money. I had to, you know, like I really did kind of cut my trip short. But so I gave Kaka Shah and Jitendra $300 and said, well, try printing these 2 designs and let's see what happens. Just, you know, just as a lark. The worst that'll happen is I'll lose my $300. But I knew I could trust them just because, I mean, I didn't really care. I mean, they're wonderful people, and I sensed that they were, and I knew that they would try their best. And the worst that would happen is that it wouldn't work out. But it worked out. And so everything worked out. And so that meant that I had, I told them too, there's no chance I'm coming back here for 5 years. There is no way I'm going to be able to manage any facet of this in India. If we're going to do this book project together, it will be wholly up to you. I simply will not be here for it, but I will help you, and I'll find a way to get the money. And so I reached out to a guy who had purchased this book, the first book, and he agreed to do it. And in August, this little boy was born, and I became a full-time dad. And so, you know, it's winter and it's cold, and those guys are, so I'm the at-home dad. And then it turned out that 6 months later, these guys also had a baby. That was the funny part. So Jitendra becomes the at-home dad because she has the job at the World Literacy Canada. And so he was the at-home dad, taking care of a tiny baby. So we were exchanging notes about how to do this. And he was way out of, I mean, as a cultural outlier, you don't get much further out than that. I might also mention that she was raised in a Gandhi ashram. She's Muslim. She was raised from the age of 5 to her adulthood. And so she's very much of that world, of the Gandhi ashram world. And he is of, I don't know if he's, I don't know what caste he is. I've never asked. But he's certainly not of the well-to-do castes, as a farmer. And so that created a lot of clash. A Hindu-Muslim marriage can get you killed, for real. And they're very courageous, and she will often wear a bindi just to get around. I've noticed that. She doesn't make much of it, but you know, the neighbors wouldn't accept them at first. So anyway, so there was a certain dynamic to that that affected how the book came through, because it became clear to me that on some level we had to, that it became more about Hindu-Muslim communal harmony that exists within the ashram, that it's kind of this ideal, that a very healing ideal of secular, a class consciousness, that everyone is, we're all in the same boat. And that's, those cultural differences are exploited by politicians in utterly obscene ways in India, anywhere, but it's very nakedly on display in India. I mean, there's horrible. You don't just look at the news if you really want to find out. It'll blow your mind. The way it's. I don't want to get off on a tangent, but when I began to realize that in essence the economy that we have inherited here is largely on the backs of people of getting it cheap somewhere else. And it's always a race to the bottom line so that we can get it cheaper. So that's how Kmart works, as opposed to the boutique store, the mom and pop grocery went out of business because 7-Eleven could buy enormous amounts of it. And it's on the backs of the chasing the cheapest thing. It really is, it is a form of indentured servitude and slavery around the world, to be honest. And knowing that, I knew that we had to, any collaboration that I would ever do would always have to find a way to cycle that money back into service. So this book was designed to be a benefit for Doctors Without Borders. But it was also, we paid everybody their asking prices and didn't finagle or haggle down any prices. With this book, we decided that everyone that participated would get a copy of the book so that we could sell it for them on their behalf. So that, like, the Ashrams were given copies of the book, the block printer, these machines have not really been used the way they should be for a very long time. These are fairly dying institutions, to be honest. The people that work at these, at the Sri Gandhi Ashram are generally very elderly, and they're retiring soon. And so this is actually, the chance to have this book printed at the Sri Gandhi Ashram was like the last time this will probably ever happen. These jolas had not been made for about 10 years. And these designs that we were resuscitating are actually essentially extinct. This is the canteen at the Sri Gandhi Ashram. That fire, this picture was sent to me by Jitendra, and the point he wants me to understand is that Gandhi himself had started that fire back in 1921, and that is the fire that he started. It has never been extinguished. And so for people that come to visit the ashram, having a meal there is like a form of darshan in a way, like almost like an agnihotra with chapatis. And their chapatis were the best chapatis I had ever had. And so these gentlemen here, these are the, you know, this gentleman is the guy that makes the screens. They're putting it out, pinning it down for printing. This is that first layer. It's the design done by J.P. Jaisawal, probably in the 70s, who we found and commissioned new works from, which was amazing. He did this. He did this, like basically a Jola image, and I asked them to do a group portrait of the print crew for the book, and he inserted me in with Kakasha and Jitendra. You know, so to find myself on a Jola bag was really, I had really arrived, you know. And then, so anyway, so these guys are printing, and these are the images that they sent. We had blocks cut from works by contemporary artists and that I had curated, that I know from New York. I'll reach down here and grab this and pull her up. But to make Other Imaginings. What became Other Imaginings? It was the title that we gave the book. Mr. Honda suggested the title. I asked him what, I always ask his opinion on anything we do. And he suggested, you know, you should call it Other Imaginings and it should have more block prints. And I go, okay, so this is what we will do. You know, I didn't follow his instructions exactly. He said it should be smaller, more intimate, and I agree. But these Jola bags are of a certain size, and I wanted to maintain that scale. But anyway, that's that print. He's cutting it, and Prakashji, he got a copy of the book, and we sold it for him. It was very nice. This is J.P. Jaiswal did some artwork. That's Khan Abdul Ghaffar Khan, and that's what the ashram did with what they finished. This is the crew. There's Kakasha, and there's Mr. Jaiswal here. He's the guy on the second to the right. The printer on the right, and then there's Gulabji, and the gentleman whose name I can't recall, but he does the screens. He manages the office, and he does the color separation. I've got all their names written down, but I've only ever met them very briefly in passing. So if you'll forgive me, Mr. Jaiswal, we had a wonderful day at his house. One of the pages in the book was done in Orissa. It's an artwork by Jenny Holzer. She kind of threw me a curve because she insisted that it be woven instead of block printed, which is what I wanted to do because that's so much simpler. She said it had to be woven and it had to be organic cotton, which set off a whole chain of complications, which was great though, because then I learned a lot about organic cotton that I didn't know. And this was done in Orissa, had to be done away from Varanasi. And that was done with the help of Pankaja Sethi, a very, very talented textile artist and curator of fine handloom textiles. And I've got to zip this along because there's an awful lot to go. To do the cover of this book, we did it in Varanasi at Mr. Khan's, what is it? Oh, yeah, this is very conveniently, I've got I did a thank you page in the book. So I can cheat and I can look up who did the weaving. Ansar, Firoz Ansar wove the cover. And he got a copy of the book too. And we sold it. Actually, we gave it to the workshop. And I might just have to track down Firoz and see if how that played out. They had to make a new pit loom to weave it. These are I think there were thousands of these cards that were punched for each one of these transitions within the weaving. And by the way, this may not mean much to people. Wouldn't have meant anything to me before I was doing this. But the Tana and the Bana, the weft and the weave of this, it's khadi. It's all khadi. It's 100% khadi. Even the long strands that run the whole length, these were also homespun, believe it or not. That's very hard to get. And we lucked out because somebody had made more than they needed for a project to celebrate Narendra Modi. And so we were able to acquire the extra threads to get this woven. So this is all homespun, and it's hand woven. And it was done in the jacquard loom, and those are the cards that did it. And I would also say, too, that this is the very first time that these guys had ever done a human. To find most of the weavers are Muslim, so it's very difficult to find a weaver who is willing to do a graven image of a human being, which I don't think that Islam has anything to say about it, but I think that the Wahhabist perspective, I don't want to go in that too deeply, but finding somebody who would put a human being on, a woven human being, was very difficult until we found Firoz Khan. And bless his heart, the first version they did was crazy. It looked like he'd been kneed in the nuts. They didn't have eyelids. It was so bad. When I got the picture, it was his very first rendition of a human, and it was Gandhi on his first satyagraha when he adopts Indian dress in South Africa. And it's a beautiful portrait, very famous, when he's about 44 years old. And And so I thought that was appropriate to this. Oh, and by the way, the textile is kind of personified. I had just gotten a textile and used it, but I was later deciphered for me by a guy from Georgia who understood the textiles and said this symbolizes the hearth and the health of the household, and a bunch of basically it was about the family and the home, which was quite interesting because it seemed very appropriate. I did not know that when I just basically lifted it off the carpet from my floor by taking a picture of it and kind of putting it together. I'm a lifter. I appropriate prolifically, and I'm shameless about it because the intelligence that goes into creating these things in the first place, when you put them together, sometimes comes up with something that's a whole new thing that's better than the sum of its parts. And I recommend using your heart and your intuition sometimes to make pretty choices. As one of the weavers working, I think that's Feroz Ansar. This is coming off. Oh, one thing. We didn't anticipate that the image would shrink as much as it did because of the tension of the wire. So while we're measuring it, when they actually cut him off, that's why he's a little bit short. We learned the learning curve of this book. Well, I shouldn't point out its shortcomings. I did want to point out that this is very much the process that Van Gogh was spending so much time on before he went down to the south of France. It was his, the plight of weavers has never really changed. It just moves geographically, apparently. This is the book. Here's the insides of the book. The Jola on the right is the one that we had duplicated. Mr. Jaiswal saw the Jola and they had to do a painted version of each one in the appropriate scale. Yeah, there's a couple of images that are really funny, but it's off register because the Jola that he was copying from was off register. So when he did a painting of it, he painted it exactly as it was off register. So there is no way to get it to register properly. You know what I mean? You can't walk it back. It's part of the piece now. And so it's fantastic. And the farther off it gets, the better it gets. I've got some massively off registration pages. So just to kind of walk you through rather quickly, there's Dr. Ambedkar. I noticed there were no Jolas of Dr. Ambedkar, and I decided to rectify that in my small way. And my collaborators were thrilled because it was something that's about the penny. That's the story of that was inspired by that penny about Gandhi incarnated. I'll just kind of slip through there. That's Dorothea Iannone. That's just. I'm just going to flip through this really quick because I realize we've gone so far. I felt that it was important to include an image of Khan Abdul Ghaffar Khan, who's completely unknown almost everywhere. And I'll spare you the lecture on him, but I will give it to you if you ask me. There's a work by Arijit Sen from People Tree. I asked Mr. Jaiswal, what does technology look like to you in these days, because he had been around in the ashram all these years. Up in the sky, you'll notice that these little orange discs, those are UFOs up there with the satellites. I thought that was interesting. I didn't see that coming. Jenny Holzer. This Lisa Beck with this image of the Katab Minar, which I just thought was the perfect pairing. You've probably seen, if you've been around Varanasi, you've probably seen somebody walking around with those Jolas. Judith Linhares, fantastic, Tiger Talk. Sutanu Panagrahi and Yoko Ono. That piece was explicitly about India. It's a mend piece. Mend carefully, think of mending the world at the same time. And this is the thank you page. And so the idea is that the book should be designed as a resource to anyone who might wish to reach these people personally. So that you could actually test your own theses about what might be possible and what is not. Inside the front cover of the book, there's a pocket with the catalog. It's attached to a little string, so for people in special collections, it'd be less likely to wander off. There's only so much I can do, but I hope this will stay. I'll get you another one if somebody does. There's a very brief essay, and then each page indicates the artist, the title of the work, who did the screen or block printing or the weaving, and then the source of the khadi, where it came, and the name of it, and the town that it comes from. And then then there's a bibliography of all the research that I did. But I'm pretty happy with that. And then there's contact information of all the artists and all the ashrams and all the people that collaborated with me on this project with their email and phone number, so you can check anything I've said against the truth. And I don't think you'll have any problem. I mean, I don't think I'll have any problem. You won't have any problem getting a hold of them. And I would encourage anyone to call any of these people, because they're people that have changed my life for much to the better, and I'm grateful to each and every one of them for their time. And I do mean it. If you find something in this book that you find of interest, contact them, and you won't regret it. And as a great lifter, I copied this after a copy of after the Navajivan publishing house from Ahmedabad. Even the back, actually, I used the original cover for that. So there's something about a culture that makes no effort to ingratiate itself or to accommodate mercantile stuff. This is the copy number 100. Oh, where is that? Where is that page that I wanted to show you? Right. So I funded this book by, when I told you I found a sponsor, I invited the gentleman to buy the only signed copy we'd ever make. That was another thing that Mr. Honda told me to do. And he was right, because we got it so wrong with this one. We thought that the art market would support an artist book like this, but it doesn't. I mean, I was able to give $5,000 to Doctors Without Borders, but we did not anticipate that I would still have about 40 copies of it even now. And so what we did was, with this one, we sold only one signed copy. And so I had to go to India to get it signed. And so I made an itinerary, spent a month in India. And I got to meet Dorothy Iannone in her studio. She loves the project. I was so touched. This woman is amazing. She's 85 years old and lives in Berlin, does very, very sexy work, and will get you in trouble with some of the ashram people when I approach them later. Because at least one guy I was trying to work with did object to the sexy nature, like I guess, of her work. But I don't think that is inconsistent with any of this at all, because Gandhi was a baby too, and we're not gonna, some of us don't believe in reincarnation. This is Jitendra and Kakasha's house, which I got to see. I'd never seen it before. This is their street. And this is pretty much the whole of the town, because it is just one little street. I think there's maybe only a few hundred people that live in it. That's the mayor on the motorcycle. We had just dined at a storefront down the street. And this is the local water buffalo on their way to their fields. That is Kabir. He was born 6 months after my son, so he's the evidence of what two at-home dads can do when they put their minds to it. And that's a thank you, that's a birthday card to Frank, the guy who had funded our book. Kabir signed it as well. It was very sweet. And so we had some events. There was of Gandhi ashram workers. People had come from Akbarpur to Varanasi. It was very nice, very sweet. My heart fills when I think of it, and it makes words hard to find. So all I can say is nice. It was beautiful, and it was a privilege to be among these men who have all been working at these ashrams since the late '60s, early '70s, and they are, it's their work that actually got me interested in Gandhi's mission at all. I didn't know it at all, and it was touching to show Mr. Jaiswal that his work had mattered, at least to some guy in Iowa, all the way across the world. Like what? Sorry, I keep touching this thing. That where in a culture where everybody's thinking about Levi's and how to get ahead in tech, it was that he was not completely forgotten, and there's a lot of value in the work that they do. It's deep, really, truly, pretty deep. And Firoz Khan, it's his workshop. Anyway, so and then this is the son of one of the guys, the Pratima Walas. I'm showing this now. It's just family pictures. That's the picture of Uday. He's an artist. He's the son of Gopalji, who I at the workshop, to come full circle. And I hope to do a third book and involve him, because he's a great draftsman. And anyway, I'll just zip along. That's the book that we got signed at the end of that trip. This is a conference that's Kakasha. She's the hell of an organizer and a great person, and she is not to be underestimated. She and Kabir went down to Warda. We met a farmer. We're going to ideally commission a cotton crop from this gentleman to about a metric ton of cotton, because we realized that the people whose story never got told in all this were the farmers who actually grow the cotton, and their circumstances as agricultural workers is worth investigating and worth getting to know better and worth honoring, and it's where it all starts. And so what I want to do is do a third and final 5-year plan book that we grow from cotton, and that focuses on the farmers and their conditions of their life, and what they may hope for in the future, and what we can maybe, how we may visualize a better future for everyone, because we all wear cotton. And I think there's the lady who spins it. This is at the Gram Seva Mandal in Warda. And that's where these guys are researching, and I'm pretty certain that they'll be the people we're working with. And I think that's the last image. Yeah, that's Warda. Thank you all very much for coming. It's a privilege. Thank you. Thanks, guys.